Our webinar today. My name is Kim Bussey. I'm the Key Relationship Manager here with the Omnia. And we're so happy that you've joined us today to talk about employee recruiting methods to hire right the first time. We're going to have some really great dialogue today, not only about recruiting, but the steps to take during hiring right the first time. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping rules. At the top of your screen, you should see an icon with a hand raised. Go ahead and look at it. Raise your hand if you can hear me. If at any time you agree or disagree with something I say, feel free to let me know. If you need me to speak a little louder or a little softer, let me know. If you need me to speed up or slow down because I'm talking a little bit too fast, let me know. And of course, because I can't get immediate feedback from you, love any laughter and applause. Go ahead and you can do that as well. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end of the session. But if at any time you have any questions, please go ahead. Type them in the chat box. We'll take a look at them, answer them as we go, as well as talk a little bit about at the end. If you are frantically going to try to write notes, the presentation will be available at the end for downloading with a couple of other little tips and tricks. We always like to give an extra resource. And we do record our webinars. So if for some reason your sound goes out or you get distracted, which hopefully that won't be the case, but I do know we all have busy lives, go ahead and know that in about a week, the webinar will be up on our page. If you follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, you'll receive some of those notifications as well. So if you don't already follow us, make sure that we do. So before we begin and dive really into the meat of the webinar, I want to ask you a question. So what is the very first word that pops into your head when you think about recruitment? Go ahead and type it into this top box right here where you're going to see me. For me, sometimes it's painful, right? So what is the first word that you think about? Type it in that top box for me, and we'll go ahead and as we see people. So time consuming. Oh, wow. Seeing a lot come in. Overwhelmed, stressful, hard. Stressful seems to be, and time consuming seem to be the ones that are coming out. Hit or miss. There's challenging. Definitely that time consumption. So it consumes our time that we could be doing other things, right? And it is stressful. I love that. It's a headache. Oh, here we go again. It's easier to get them in than out. Absolutely, Jan. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Here at Omnia, we are a behavioral assessment company. We work with our clients to give them some additional information for that selection. And we always say it's better to hire slow and fire fast. But what typically happens, especially in the recruiting world, because it is so time consuming and it's stressful and I've got an open position and what are we going to do? Most of the time we do the opposite, right? Oh, well, we're going to go ahead and try them. We may work out, but then once they're here, oh my goodness, if they're not working out, it's so much harder to get them out. Plus, you're doing yourself a disservice because then you're thinking in the back of your head, oh, here we go again. What we're really going to focus on some of those recruiting and three of the biggest mistakes that typically happen, most common mistakes, but we're also going to talk about different ways to recruit and where the recruiting strategies fall into play. So just a couple of quotes I want to start off with. Bill Gates says the key for us, number one, has always been hiring very smart people. Steve Wynn of Wynn Las Vegas says human resources isn't a thing we do, it's the thing that runs our business. Jim Collins says a company should limit its growth based on its ability to attract enough of the right people. The smartest business decision you can make is to hire qualified people. Bringing the right people on board saves us thousands, and your business will run smoothly and efficiently. Brian Tracy. And I believe that we all agree with that, right? So if you at the top of your screen, if you agree with it, our people are the key to our business's success. Let me know if you agree or disagree with it either. But what happens is a lot of times we know that and we understand that, but we don't spend the time for it. So many times we have a strategic plan for business development, right? We know where we want to be in 3 to 5 years. but there isn't that same plan for recruiting and retaining employees. And because we have that lack of a consistent plan, we really run into the true cost of vacancy. Now, we've all heard various amounts of the cost of the vacancy, anywhere from, if you have an opening, it's half the annual salary to 1.5 times the annual salary if it's a revenue generating position. But a lot of times we forget about the cost, the hidden cost of vacancies. Some of those are the knowledge. You share your knowledge. You teach people, and now you have a vacancy. They're not able to relay that you have someone, there's a knowledge gap between what your business does and what your customers understand. You begin to lose relationships or that closeness of relationships because is your team becoming overworked? Are they able to give that same level of customer service that you're expecting? You have a decrease of productivity. You know, there's a saying that says many hands make the work light, and it comes into play. I know here at Omnia, even if we have someone out for an extended period of time, recently we had someone out on maternity leave, and we saw a decrease of the revenue, not because the other people weren't producing and trying to do more, but there's only so much, only so many hours in a workday, only so much one person can do. An open position creates that stress, but it also creates a vacancy, a void of productivity, and it can affect your market share. And that's before we even go into your time. So many of you said it was time consuming. So the time lost for the management time, where you're talking to people and interviewing, you know, the retraining time, the replacement time, the training time, all of those add up. Then you've got to think about the ramp up costs, the effect of morale. What are we going to do? Do we look at someone internal versus external? Now we've got both candidates. The administrative cost. Not hiring and recruiting correctly the first time and not having that strategy is going to cost us hundreds and thousands of dollars over time. I was talking to a client recently, and they said that their vacancies, we did some calculations and some return on investment, and one of the things that came back is that every open position costs that company at least $10,000 to $15,000. And it's not in that they're revenue generating. Yes, they've lost some revenue generating, but the cost of the career boards, the cost of the recruiting efforts, the cost of just having to pay overtime, and all of that comes into play. So, how do we really minimize that cost? Well, the first step is to have a strategy, a recruiting strategy. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, go ahead and rate your recruiting strategy. If this is your first time ever with an Omnia webinar, we do ask questions. It's going to be interactive. So, go ahead and let me know. Is it 1, what strategy? It's kind of hit and miss. 3, average. 4, I stick with the strategy for the most part. Or 5, our strategy brings results consistently. Go as you're doing that, after you decide which one you are, what are some of the steps in your recruitment strategy? And one of the things that we're going to talk about as you're typing that in and answering those questions is we're going to focus a lot on Southwest Airlines. So very popular. Most of everybody has either flown and or heard of Southwest, possibly both. And we're going to look at what they do to be so successful in their recruitment strategy. And if you're wondering if their recruitment strategy is successful, one in a 2016 interview, Sherry Conaway, who's one of Southwest directors in people development, said in 2015, we received 371,202 resumes and hired nearly 6,000 new employees. They've got something going on. So overall, I see on a scale of 1 to 5, 2 is where our recruiting strategy is. It's a little bit hit and miss, and that's 61% of everyone. And that's great that you recognize and that you're here. Now, some of the things that we see is use of a local employment office, run an ad or attend a career fair or collect resumes. Then call on the resumes, invite the ones I'm interested in, choose one and make an offer. There's Indeed, there's definitely career boards. I know here we're based in Florida. We have something that's called Career Source, where it is kind of a local employment office, but it's in conjunction with the state of Florida, where they're working to help people connect with local businesses. Thank you for that transparency of the recruitment strategy is definitely more reactive than proactive. LinkedIn employee referrals, and we're going to talk about employee referrals. Social media is becoming more and more popular, but how do you use that social media to be effective? And once again, career websites, resumes, review them, looking at them, phone interviews, and we're going to talk a lot today on really focusing on that strategy and creating the strategy. And then as we go along over the next 3 series, we're going to talk more about that interviewing as well as focusing a little bit more on onboarding as well. So I'm picking up some common themes, looking at resumes, being a little bit more reactive versus proactive. And I know that there's a couple of people who's having some issues with sound. Go ahead and try to log back in and log out, log back in. Hopefully that'll correct it. If not, we do have that recording that will be available in a week. We, with recruiting, want to be proactive. And the proactive that we create is going to be a little, some of it is creating that culture so that when they see that we have an opening, people are applying. Or even if there's not a true opening, you're still receiving information. But first, you have to identify the strategy. Just like you have that strategic plan to bring in business, to grow your business, you have to have a recruitment strategy. And the first thing you want to say is, why are we hiring? Are we hiring just to fill a position because we've had this position? Or is it a new position? Do we really need to hire? Is it something that we could translate into a hybrid position or relocate some of that? What are the skills you're looking for? I always advise clients, it's something I've done for 20 plus years. It's helped streamline it, is create a list of non-negotiable skills. Maybe it's a license. Maybe it's administrative. They have to know X. Maybe it's accounting. But you create a list of non-negotiables as well as a wish list. Now, why do you think we have non-negotiables in a wish list? Because that's going to help you define between various candidates at one time. You have two equal candidates, but someone is on a has one other thing that's on your wish list, then that's where you're going to go. Also think about your ideal candidate. Who do you need? And how does this position fit into the global strategic plan? What we mean by that is you really have to take a look at it and say, what are they going to bring that's going to take us to the next level? We always want to look for that employee, that person who's going to really help us grow. Because if not, if we don't have a strategy, we are definitely going to get lost in the maze of recruitment, right? That maze is like, what do I do? Where do I go? Especially if it's unexpected. If it's an expected opening, then we can start getting our ducks in a row. We ask for some of that employee information. If it's unexpected, we do a few things, right? We either take the shotgun approach and try everything to bring in people. I'm going to try social media. I'm posting it on the career boards. I'm looking at just, do you have a body? Can you pass the mirror test? Come on in. I want to talk to you. So we have that overly broad recruiting focus. Or some of that recruiting step is there's too many steps, the candidates get stuck. And it doesn't mean that the process has to be short. And that is one of the mistakes that we're going to focus on a little bit today. But make sure that whatever the steps are, that they're clear. If you're posting on a career fair or you're going to a career fair, be very clear about what the next steps are. Is it filling out an application at that time? Is it, sending you a resume? Or we're unable to hook candidates. That is huge, especially without a strategy. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how can you find the absolute best candidates? or it's a branding mismatch. And when we talk about branding, we're talking a little bit more about that culture mismatch. If you are not a tech company, tech savvy company, then is social media the best place for you to advertise other than LinkedIn? Everyone, LinkedIn is always, but do you want to go out and tweet and Facebook and Instagram these positions if that's not who your company is? Because the candidates that you're targeting are those candidates who use that media, who are comfortable with that media. Now, if it's not what your company is, but it's where you want to go, then absolutely go ahead and do that. But if it's not, then you may want to think, okay, where do we want to advertise? If you're looking for someone who is that young millennial who's, that go-getter, assertive, bringing fresh eyes and fresh breath to the company, advertising in the newspaper is probably not going to get you there. Go to the colleges. The colleges, universities typically host 2 to 3 job fairs on campus a year. You want to go where your candidates are. And you can only do that by really truly understanding what your strategy is and then being able to match your recruiting method with your brand. So, how to hire smart, and we're going to focus with, we're talking about recruiting, but it all plays into the same pyramid. So the first thing is identifying your needs. We've talked about that with creating your strategy, looking at your recruiting channels, which we're going to explore a little bit more, resume review, and initial interview. Now, the assessments, interview, skills testing, references, results, all of this is going to be discussed later. But I wanted to show you the bigger picture because a lot of times we get caught up in the now. I need someone now. So I'm not sure what those steps are. And it goes back to being caught in that recruitment maze. If you don't know what your steps are, then your candidates are going to be stuck. So understanding what it is, understanding those channels is going to assist you with knowing how do I move this along. Also, right now looking at this may even say, you know what, as I'm creating my strategy for recruitment, for hiring right the first time, what do I need to do? Well, oh, yeah, I need to create my strategy, identify my needs. Now, where am I going for recruiting? How do I look at that resume? And then moving forward through that process to get you to the offer to the right person so that you can move on. So you always want to ask yourself, and as we're talking about that and focusing on the first 3 steps, that recruitment, that resume review, the identifying your strategies and your needs, next week, we're going to focus on that behavioral interview. So we're going to go a little bit more. So first, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. So the first question you want to ask yourself is, do I have a written job description in place? Yes or no? And then, when was the last time I updated this job description? Did I update it the last time I hired? Do I look at it annually? Rarely. Or, you know what? I don't even have a written job description. So, what am I going to do with that? So, most of you do have written job descriptions in place. My recommendation is that you review them at least annually. Reason for that, it takes you back to that strategy. If you know what you're looking for, then you're looking at it once a year, then you can update as you go along. Also, you may want to look at it as every time we revise our business strategy, a strategic plan, let's look at those job descriptions. It's key to have that written job description in place because with that written job description in place, what you're going to really find out is that I can say, is it accurate? Is it truly what we need now? Maybe tying it right back into asking yourself, what are we hiring for and why are we looking for it? Does the job description accurately detail the skills that were needed? What are the job's non-negotiables? You have to have a license. Maybe you're in insurance. Maybe you're in a industry financial that requires a mortgage license or a certain license. Do they have those licenses? Maybe it's a position where they have to have a driver's license or a clean record. And then how do you describe the culture? Describing the culture is key in the recruiting process. So Many times when we're writing an ad, the first thing that we describe is the job. I need a go-getter who's assertive that can sales oriented. But what's the culture? Because what you think is a go-getter and what the candidates out there think are go-getters are completely different. Is your culture fast paced? Is it more of the family orientation? By knowing that and asking yourself, how can I describe the culture in 30 seconds or less, is going to help you with writing that recruitment ad. It's going to help you with writing those job descriptions accurately. As you understand that, as you begin to do that, it's going to be critical before you start your recruiting process. Because once you've done that, then it's a lot easier to avoid mistake number one. So a lot of times weak recruiting is a part of it. We don't really know where we're going, so we're like, oh, I'm going to go with the tried and true. I'm going to go with the ad. I'm going to go with the resumes. I'm going to go with the career boards. Well, a lot of times with career boards, which are a great tool, but what happens is that candidates can type in keywords. So if your job says sales, then they're going to say, oh, automatic, here's my resume. It said sales because it picks it up. Know that it's okay to recognize customers and employees as recruiters. In fact, your employees should be your number one recruitment tool. They know your clientele. They know your culture. And if they're like me, your top employees probably won't refer someone unless they think that they are going to be a part of the organization. I know for myself, I don't refer anyone because it's my reputation on the line. So knowing that, recruiting don't depend on one or the other. Use a combination. Talk to your customers, talk to your employees. Maybe you offer that employee referral program where if they come in for an in-person interview, they receive some type of pay, $50. If they are there for 6 months later, they get another little bonus. Think of your website. That's your website is the number one recruiting tool that you have after your employees. Does it excite people? Is it easy to find where you've posted career opportunities? And every website should have a career opportunity. You want them to be able to find you and then very easily say what careers are available. I'm interested in this. And it could be something as simple as we're currently hiring. Go ahead and let us know, send in your resume to this email. One of my clients I was working with said that he was having a horrible time with recruiting. He was doing the career boards and wasn't getting anything. When he changed his job description, his ad, to talk more about the culture, and at the bottom he said, please include a cover letter that tells me why you would think you would be a good fit for the culture. It still included some of the job description. He received over 500 resumes. Now he eliminated 75% of them right off the bat because they didn't have a cover letter. So he's like, they didn't read what I needed them to do. So I kind of kicked them to the curb. But it was important. So maybe it's a niche job site. If you have a highly skilled IT position, you go to those job sites. Make sure that you're networking, talking to once again, your peers, business owners. Who would you recommend? Those job fairs. I told you we were going to talk a little bit more about Southwest. Southwest each year goes to at least 125 plus campuses across the country. They go to high schools, military, veteran career fairs, as well as association fairs. So, Women in Aviation, Organization of Black Airline Pilots events, so that they're able to meet people. It's all about networking. If you see someone who gives great service that you feel are going to be able to come in, give them your business card, talk to them. And then there's also resume and recruiting services. It's really understanding, okay, I can't really find someone or I don't have the time. I'm going to pay someone to recruit. Once again, let them know exactly what you're looking for. I know with Omnia, we have a strategic partner that is a resume service group. They'll help source out active resumes, not just those keyword searches, but they'll help you find resumes that you can follow up on. But to avoid that weak recruitment, one, explore all your options, but then also talk about know this. Where am I going to go and what is my brand? And when we talk about branding, it's all about your culture in the candidate experience. And you need to really leverage that marketing to improve it. So, first of all, it goes beyond post and hope. I'm going to put this out there and hope someone responds. Someone said that their strategy was definitely more reactive than proactive. You want to tailor your message to the audience. And we do, if you have those ad assistants, you want to make sure that it's a positive interview and employee experience. So, especially if you're outsourcing to multiple firms, you want to be very cautious because it dilutes the brand and message. Your brand determines the caliber of candidates that your company attracts, so pay attention to it. Think of the global village of information that's out there. So Glassdoor, things of those websites, because complaints will always be visible. That's why it's so important to have that positive interview and employee experience. And you can't always make everybody happy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is consider this. Every candidate that you interview is a possible customer or competitor. How do you end that interview experience? And then once again, make sure that you're talking about your culture and that you're not just talking about it, but it's branded across all areas. Remember, your website, social media, your LinkedIn is going to be key. And it seems like a lot of work in the beginning, and it is. But when you do this, when you talk about culture as well as position, this is our brand, this is who we are, quality candidates will come to you. One of my favorite things I tell all candidates who apply to Omnia, and it's a little bit rare, but we are a smaller company with global clients, and we're able to assist. We operate lean and efficiently, but we always say that there's not a lot of layers of management here. I always get laughed at, but I'm always say, if you're looking for a company that you can come and innovate and dig in and make a difference and have personal growth, this is the company for you. If you're looking for a company where you're going to grow and get a title, then we're probably not the right place for you. And it seems a little bit harsh, right? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you say that during the recruiting process, which includes some of those phone. But I do, because one, I want to be open and transparent about what our culture is. We have a dynamic culture. I love working for Omnia, but we don't have a lot of management layers. Don't you think your quality candidates want to know that before they come on board? Know your culture, live your culture, understand it, because when you do that, you're going to attract the right people. They're going to want to come work for you. So, quick question. When you hear Southwest, what immediately comes to your mind about their culture? Is it the fun? Is it the pricing? Is it the airlines? But when you think about it, go ahead and type in when you hear Southwest, what do you immediately think about? For me, I love the YouTube videos where they have their flight attendants doing something fun and crazy. There's the one where someone's rapping and everything involved in it. We've all heard different things. Oh, so airlines, they don't fly there, so you don't know much about them. Southwest prides itself on its fun culture. So positive attitudes, friendly employees. Um, they do have some of those tangibles like flexibility for ticket changes, cheaper flights. But for me, the biggest thing um, is their customer service. I have not met, and I fly quite frequently with work, not met one unhappy Southwest employee. Not one. And whether it's a large airline terminal like LAX or something smaller like Ohio, They are all very fun and friendly. They're focused on that guest comfort and they're happy. Great attitudes and they keep coming. So I'm seeing this positive customer service. And when you look at their website, in some of their cultures, in their core values, they talk about having fun. Now, I will tell you that their recruiters may not be having as much fun. Remember, I told you that in 2015, they received 371,202 resumes. They hired nearly 6,000 new employees, which is less than 2% of all applicants. However, it's not unusual for them to interview more than 100 people to fill a single position. And that's because their culture is they believe that their employees are the key to their success. We hire tough at Southwest. You want to make sure that you're hiring tough in your company. Because mistake number 2 is being too easy. And I know I hear, yeah, but think about this. Is your hiring process going to impress or attract those that have a choice? When I was looking at this and really studying Southwest, here's a couple of things that I saw on Glassdoor. Their process lasts anywhere between 2 weeks and 5 months. In fact, the average that I saw for an employee from the time that they applied to the time that they were hired was 5 months. Now, granted, that's a really long time, and Southwest is a huge company, but they sourced everything. So we can't do that. Yeah, but I need somebody now. We have to fill the job. That's when we get in trouble, right? With the mirror test. Breathe on the mirror. Okay, you can breathe. You're hired. Or we go with our gut. I know a salesperson when I see one, and I don't have time for all this interviewing. Everything you're telling me is way too difficult, way too hard. It's not. Think back. Do you have your strategy? If you have your strategy in place, then you're going to know, okay, really quickly, let me do this check mark. Yes, what do we need? How important is this job? How do we do this? Now, let's go through the hiring process. Let's recruit. Where are we recruiting for? Well, we have an employee referral bonus program. I'm going to post something on social media. We have our careers listed on our website, so I can just do a quick update and we're good. Understanding that your hiring and recruiting process should attract top talent. And you need to stress how long that process is going to be. Because quality people can go anywhere. They want to know that you have a process, a recruitment process, a hiring process that's going to eliminate those that don't have the same caliber of talent for them. I'm not saying that you should take 4 or 5 months. I understand that. We just talked about the cost of the vacancy. But are you hiring right the first time? And that's where we really want to kind of fall into. As a recruitment tool, you have some best practices, and I always like to talk about this real quick. So with that, as you're recruiting, you're going to start getting resumes as part of your strategy. Say, what am I interviewing for? And do I have a behavioral assessment that's going to play into it? Well, why do we partner with that? Well, because the behavioral assessment is going to help you dive deeper below what the candidate says on their resume. It's the candidate's marketing tool. Once again, you want to make sure it's a covered letter tailored to your position. Remember the career boards, Indeed, Monster, candidates can put in keywords, service, sales. Their resumes will automatically be generated to come to any position that lists those keywords. So really focus in your recruitment process is this about me? Are the skills that they have really what we've listed in there? And that's where that having that recruitment branding is key. I know what we're looking for. This is our culture. Just give me a brief cover letter about why you would fit into this culture. What skills are you going to bring to enhance our culture? If they don't have that, then you need to move on because we've talked about recruitment, but it also ties back into when you call the candidate, do they really know who you are? If they don't, then you need to go back and take a look at your recruitment process. What else do I need to do to really eliminate some of these people applying that shouldn't be applying? Also, mistake number 3, last but not least, is you've created your recruitment strategy. You've looked at different resumes, but how do you communicate it? So recruitment starts from the moment of posting a position to the final offer and the first start date. What I mean by that is that with the hiring process, a lot of times we say, okay, we've got that post and hope. I've got resumes. I'm going to call back those who I like and those I don't, maybe or maybe not. But you need a strategy that takes you all the way through. As you're talking with your candidates, set those expectations. We recently went through a hiring process here at Omnia, and I said, here's our process. We're reviewing resumes. We're conducting phone interviews for the next 3 weeks. The next step for those candidates that proceed through our process will be invited in for an in-person interview. And then the next step would be a final interview with our SVP of sales. We let them know that that process was going to take 2 to 3 months. And it was okay because the candidates that we hired was fine with that. Now we invite questions. How long is it going to take? Are you going to interview everyone? And I would say that make sure that with your process as well that you have a little bit of fluidity. You want to make sure that when you're inviting those questions in as you're talking to people, that if you find a great candidate, you don't have to wait until those 3 weeks are over with, but you want to make sure that you set that expectation. The other thing as well is that as you're discussing that hiring process during that very first phone interview with that recruitment, it's going to allow you to really talk to them about what you're expecting in a very quick conversation and what they can expect from you. Remember, you're creating your brand experience from the very moment. So if you say your culture is open and transparent and communication is key, and you're not following through with the hiring process, what are you telling your candidates? We don't practice what we preach. You've really got to figure out what that strategy. And you say this a lot: strategy, strategy, strategy. It's like this. Raise your hand if you would, you're taking a family vacation and you hop in the car with a packed bag and you have no idea where you're going and no idea what you're going to do once you get there. Go ahead and let me raise your hand if that's you. Yeah, I'm not seeing, I see one person raise their hand. That is our adventurous person in our group today. Most of you are like, no, we have a plan. I need to know at least where I'm going, especially if it's not just you traveling. Most of the time people don't just hop on a plane and say, go to the airport and say, hey, give me the next ticket available to wherever it's going to be. We have a strategy. We know where we're going. We've got an idea of why we want to go there. We've got, some airline and our rental cars, or we've got hotels set up, or maybe you're staying with family, but you're not going to just show up on their door and go, surprise, the family and I are here for a week. Most of the time we at least call and say, can we come in? And, we're planning on being in the area. Can we stay with you? You've got to do the same thing with your hiring process and your recruiting process, is know what strategy is. Know what your needs are, what your channels you're going to use. Am I going to use mainly social media or am I going to do both? How am I looking at these resumes? What are the key words that I'm looking for? Do those skills match up with the needs I've already identified? And then taking them through that initial interview, using assessments like those behavior assessments that allow you to dive deeper below what a candidate says to really focus on what their natural behavioral traits are. They say they're a salesperson, but can they really sell? Or are they everybody's gonna like them, but they can't dive a little bit deeper and close the deal? And then we're going to focus over the next 3 weeks on the interview. So we're going to talk next week about behavioralist interview questions. And it is going to be a roll your sleeves up, dive in, very proactive with creating those behavioralist interview questions, why we need them, Why are the importance of them? How do I create them? How do I ask the right questions? Where do they fall into the interview? How they partner with assessments and skills testing and references to take you to needing the results so that you can make an offer. So once you have that clear offer made, you're bringing that person on board, then we're going to walk you through on the 21st is onboarding essentials for maximum success and then delivering that painless 90-day employee performance evaluation. The two hardest parts is the recruitment and the interviewing, and then that dreaded performance evaluation. So both for candidates as well as employers. So we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. But as we do that, I'm going to leave you with this comment by Lawrence Bossidy. He was the former COO of GE. And he says, I am convinced that nothing we do is more important than hiring and developing people. At the end of the day, you bet on people, not strategies. And that's true. You bet on people, but you need those strategies to bring in the people that you can bet on. So look at your strategies. Is it going to be that person, that recruitment, onboarding, outsourcing the recruitment, or is it truly going to be how do I interview for the right person? Go ahead, if you have any questions, type them in. As you're doing that, I want to just direct your attention to our recruiting takeaways. We do have the presentation as well as a recruiting checklist. So if you have any questions, you're like, Kim, this is a lot of information. That checklist is just there for you to use it as a guide as you're creating your strategy. Now, one of the questions that I'm most frequently asked when I'm talking about recruitment is cost. So what's the difference between the cost of using a career board versus a recruiter versus a resume service? And what we have found is that depending on area, resume services can be very comparable with those career boards. The resume service typically is part of a recruiter where they come in and you're able to tell the resume service, this is what we're looking for, this is where we're located, our comps, there's our culture, and they actively search the 3,000 job boards that they have access to pull active resumes for you to call on. Whereas a recruiter does look for those positions and they will call and do all of that outsourcing. Once again, that outsourcing, you want to make sure that it doesn't dilute the brand, that they really understand who you are. And then, of course, the career boards, it's really taking a look at your job ads, making sure that they are reflecting what you're looking for. If you're a current Omnia client, that is a service that we do offer of reviewing job ads, or we do have some job ads as well. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. Once again, if you do have questions, or if you're like me, when I get done, I'm like, ooh, I should have asked this. Feel free to call me or email me. My information is at the top, as well as go ahead and register for the rest of our April webinars. Next week is how to get better results with behavioral job interviewing. The third week is employee onboarding essentials for maximum success, and that will be hosted by Tanya Devane. She's an amazing speaker. You definitely want to be a part of that. And then we're going to end with delivering a painless 90-day employee performance evaluation. So thank you very much for being with us today. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you next week. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you next week.